this 5 minutes back. We'll go to 11:55. But here's a story. My lady later started crying, and she was cut off. And my lady later started crying, and she was caught off. And
Push the mic up a little bit.
then the rest of my gathering started crying, and we were in the midst of reading 1619 Project. And they said, Rev, nobody ever told us that black people were Christian before we came. We thought Christianity was a product of slavery. Why didn't we hear this? Why nobody tells us anything about being black and having an existence? And why didn't we, before Bobby came to church, know anything about our churches organizing and having a black identity in the Methodist denomination? So as we transition, because we're about to elect bishops again, and the question really perplexes my soul, are we going to elect folk that speak to the issues of blackness and the survival of the black church? I mean, is that still important, BMCR? Is that still important that we elect people that will send pastors to the churches in South Carolina that will teach folk about the importance of being black and have a pride there? So I'm just wondering as we, and that's what I want to do. I want to make sure we get to the second part of this, but who are we going to elect and who's going to lead so that we do have a church that, my son, if he decide to go past, I don't think so, not right now. He's scared. He's scared of church right now, but if he does, he can have a future, and even if he want to go.
Good question. I'll turn to our leaders here at the panel to respond.
I don't think you will. I've got to be, I'm just being, first of all, you asked my question, am I hopeful? Yeah. But do I really, in reality, believe you will? When I look at the delegations that you all have, and not you all, but I mean the annual conferences have elected, I saw a whole lot of systemic racism, or let me put it, I saw a whole lot of selfishness in the delegations. That most of the delegations had already made, people who had power in the various annual conferences had already determined who was going to be in those delegations before you all got to the annual conferences the year you voted. And when I looked at them, I cried, because I realized that there was this thing where there used to be in the Southeast a sort of compassion, because we never had the numbers in annual conferences. I mean, South Georgia, how in the world I got to be the lead of the delegation in South Georgia when we only had 5 elders, 5 black elders when I was there. And so that was compassion and the move of the Holy Spirit that got James Swanson to be the lead of the delegation and be nominated for bishop. That was God. And so I don't give any, I don't want strutting around talking about who I was. It was God. When I look at when Sharon talked about being the only black ever nominated out of Holston, man, go to Holston and look at how many elders they even have and how many black folk. The largest black population in Holston is in Chattanooga, and it's about 15% of the population. And that's only in that area. The rest of it's like 2-3%. So part of that is when you look at where at the zenith of our numbers was probably in about 96. We really had a large number of African American delegates. Yeah. We were the 4th highest voting bloc. And we could have elected more than what we did if we'd have worked together. Because the year I ran and got elected in 2004, we had 6 very wonderful candidates, and we only got 1 elected out of it. That was myself, nobody else. So part of that, when I look at our history, and when I look at how we go about electing, and then I look at the delegations that are out there now, and what somebody just said, what you said about we got our own thing that we're dealing with right now, they're not thinking about us. I just don't believe that. And there's nothing they can do to me. They couldn't do anything because once I got elected, that was it anyway. So, so part of, I'm saying when I look at the delegations, you look at them from Virginia all the way to Florida and back over towards Mississippi, I don't see how, and especially if this thing about only electing 3 passes, where y'all gonna come in? Where you gonna elect one of y'all? Now, you know, bishops don't get involved. I don't have a vote. But I'm telling you, unless they have pity, because they got the votes. And it's targeted at a particular thing. And that's what's going to rule today. Now, once people get in, and you're going to have to help them to realize what they ought to be concerned about, you know. But I just don't, you know, and I know I shouldn't even be, you know, dealing with it, but it's just true. You asked a question, I answered it. And my answer to it is when I look at the delegations, I don't see anybody. I mean, I see candidates who may be concerned, but I don't see in the delegations the will to deal with that.
Across the southeastern jurisdiction, the black delegations are lower, I think, this time. Wouldn't you say, Bishop Holster? Yeah, it's lower. I mean, in Virginia delegation, we only have one. Two.
We got the alternate.
Right. We have Chinda, who's African, and Esther, and that's it. And then you need 60%. And who else we have? Okay, and Lindsay.